Stop, what the hell? I yelled at 7:23 a.m. still in my bathrobe when I found HOA President Linda Carmichael's silver Lexus parked diagonally across my front lawn. Deep tire tracks carved through grass I'd spent 6 months nursing back to health after the drought. Her vanity plate HOA BOSS mocked me as sprinkler water pooled around her luxury tires. She stood on my porch hammering a violation notice to my door. Your driveway's full. I need somewhere to park for my inspection. That's my lawn, community property technically, read your bylaws. She tapped the notice with manicured nails. $500 fine for unauthorized lawn modifications. Your grass height exceeds regulation standards by half an inch. The metallic taste of morning coffee turned bitter as I stared at this woman who just destroyed my yard to fine me for grass that was maybe fractionally too tall. Neighbors' curtains twitched. Phones appeared. Someone was definitely recording the spectacular display of HOA insanity. But Linda had no idea what she'd just triggered. See, when you park illegally on someone's property to deliver a bogus violation notice, you're not just being petty. You're committing actual crimes that real law enforcement takes seriously. And I was about to teach her that lesson in the most publicly humiliating way possible. What would you do if your HOA president pulled this stunt? Where are you watching from? And what's your craziest HOA story? Let me back up 6 months and explain how we got to this moment of beautiful karmic justice. My name's Jordan Matthews and I moved to Sunset Ridge HOA last April after landing my dream job as senior aerospace engineer at a defense contractor nearby. Fresh off years of apartment living, I was thrilled to finally own property. Real grass, actual garage, space to breathe. The neighborhood looked perfect during my walkthrough. Well-maintained homes. Quiet streets. HOA fees of $340 monthly seemed reasonable for lawn maintenance and community amenities. What the cheerful real estate agent somehow forgot to mention was that our HOA president Linda Carmichael ran Sunset Ridge like her personal fiefdom. Linda was 52 with that specific Karen haircut that screams, "I want to speak to your manager," from 3 blocks away. Former corporate middle manager who'd been laid off during restructuring. She'd transformed her bitterness about lost authority into neighborhood tyranny that would make dictators jealous. The chemical smell of her aggressive perfume announced her presence before she appeared. Married to a tax attorney, which she mentioned constantly like having a spouse who understood deductions, made her legally untouchable. Every morning, the peaceful sound of birds was shattered by Linda's voice echoing through streets as she prowled looking for violations with the intensity of a prison guard. Week 1 of homeownership delivered my introduction to Linda's special management style. I'm unpacking boxes when this bright orange violation notice appears on my door like a traffic citation. $200 fine for non-compliant house numbers. I examined my address numbers, then every house on my street. All identical brushed nickel 4-inch digits from the same manufacturer. I counted 18 houses with the exact same numbers. Called Linda immediately. "Ma'am, these numbers are identical to everyone else's. Certain angles create visual inconsistency that disrupts neighborhood aesthetic flow," she said with that condescending tone people use when explaining obvious things to idiots. Section 742 of our guidelines clearly addresses this. The injustice burned as I wrote that check. But hey, new homeowner, pick your battles, don't make waves. That was my first mistake. Over the following months, I watched Linda's operation unfold with growing horror. She had a system: target anyone who looked educated enough to question her authority, young professionals, tech workers, anyone who might actually read the bylaws and discover her illegal fee structures. Mr. Patel got fined for excessive holiday decorations. His modest string of lights was apparently too ethnic for Linda's vision of American suburban aesthetics. The Morrison family somehow always had improperly stored trash bins. Funny how that only affected the gay couple who'd politely questioned Linda's vendor selection process. Meanwhile, Linda's friends could leave boats in driveways for months. Her sister's RV sat on Maple Street for 6 weeks without a whisper of complaint. I learned Linda had compelling motivation for squeezing residents. Her husband's law practice was struggling. Their investment properties had tanked during the market correction. She'd gotten comfortable with a certain lifestyle and those HOA president perks. Inflated salary, generous expense accounts, kickbacks from preferred contractors helped maintain her champagne taste on an increasingly beer budget. Then 3 months ago, everything shifted when I hired Jake's Landscaping. Jake Morrison was a veteran who'd started his landscaping business after retiring from the Army. Hardworking, honest, charged fair prices, and actually showed up on schedule. His work transformed my drought-damaged lawn into something resembling actual grass. That's when Linda's attention laser-focused on me. See, Linda had very specific ideas about approved vendors, specifically vendors who paid her under-the-table commissions for exclusive HOA contracts. Jake's Landscaping wasn't on that list, and me hiring an independent contractor threatened her entire kickback ecosystem. The real war was about to begin. Linda's opening salvo came disguised as community standards enforcement. 2 weeks after Jake started my lawn renovation, I found a cheerful notice in my mailbox. New landscaping approval requirements effective immediately. The smell of fresh laser printing couldn't hide the stench of targeted harassment. The rules were brutally specific. All landscaping work required pre-approval from HOA Architectural Committee. Unapproved contractors would result in $150 daily fines retroactive to project start date. Only vendors from the approved list could perform work in Sunset Ridge. I read it 3 times, feeling my blood pressure spike. Jake had been working on my lawn for 12 days. This is insane, I told my neighbor Derek over the fence. She's literally creating rules to fine me for work that's already done. Derek raised an eyebrow. Did she get member approval for these new requirements? Member approval? HOAs can't just invent rules without proper voting procedures. There are legal requirements. He caught himself. I used to work in property management before tech. Trust me, these things have processes. The next morning brought Linda's first landscaping violation fluttering under my windshield wiper. $1,800 for 12 days of unapproved contractor work. The paper felt expensive. Linda wasn't cutting corners on her revenge stationery. I remembered something from my corporate compliance training. Organizations can't impose retroactive penalties for actions that were legal when performed. That's basic contract law. Most associations can't just create rules and backdate enforcement without following proper procedures. Time for research. I spent the next week documenting every landscaping contractor working in Sunset Ridge. Morning runs became reconnaissance missions. Phone camera ready. The rhythmic slap of my running shoes on pavement marked time as I cataloged Linda's hypocrisy like some suburban private investigator. The results were absolutely beautiful. Linda's brother-in-law's landscaping company worked on 5 properties including hers. None had filed the required approval paperwork she'd just mandated. Her book club friend had contractors working for 3 weeks straight. 0 approvals on file. The guy who managed Linda's investment properties had a full crew doing major renovations. Not a single approval document existed. Meanwhile, Jake got fined $1,800 for making my lawn actually look decent. I filed a formal complaint citing selective enforcement and requesting all architectural committee meeting minutes from the past 2 years. Professional, documented, impossible to dismiss. That's when Linda made her catastrophic mistake. Betty Richardson, our 68-year-old HOA secretary who still used a typewriter for official correspondence, accidentally included Linda's personal emails in the response packet. God bless analog filing systems and elderly secretaries who don't understand email privacy settings. There it was, printed in damning black and white. That engineer thinks he's smarter than everyone. His veteran landscaper is cutting into our preferred vendor revenue. We need to make an example before others start hiring outside contractors. Engineer thinks he's smarter. I have 2 master's degrees in design guidance systems for missiles. But to Linda, educated residents were threats to her authority. The email trail got progressively worse. Linda coordinating with approved vendors to inflate prices, planning violation campaigns against specific homeowners, discussing strategies to force out residents who questioned her financial management. She'd handed me a lawsuit on a silver platter. My girlfriend Casey found me that evening spreading printed emails across my dining table like evidence at a crime scene. The rustle of papers filled silence as she read over my shoulder, her expression darkening with each page. She paused. This is actually serious fraud, like criminal fraud. You could destroy her with this. You seem pretty familiar with legal terminology for a graphic designer. She smiled mysteriously. I watch a lot of legal dramas. The satisfying click of my camera capturing each email felt like loading ammunition. Neighbors were starting to whisper support. Quietly, carefully, but it was there. Mr. Patel nodded approvingly during our morning commutes. The Morrisons offered to share their own violation documentation. Linda's grip was loosening and she could feel it, but I underestimated how desperate that would make her. See, bullies have 2 responses when challenged: back down quietly or escalate to insane levels. Linda was definitely the escalation type. The next morning brought a hand-delivered notice that made the landscaping fines look reasonable. Emergency property assessment for critical infrastructure repairs. If she couldn't get me on landscaping, she'd just invent a financial crisis and charge everyone thousands. Game on. Linda's emergency assessment letter read like a disaster movie script. Critical sewer line failures requiring immediate repair. Structural issues with community center foundation. Emergency road resurfacing needed for safety compliance. Total assessment $4,700 per household, payable within 30 days. The kicker. All work had to be performed by her approved contractors at prices that would make highway robbery look like a bargain. Funny thing about manufactured emergencies. They leave evidence. I'm an engineer, I understand infrastructure, so I did what engineers do. I investigated. The sewer lines Linda claimed were failing, inspected and certified just 8 months ago by county utilities. I pulled the public records, perfect condition, 0 issues noted. The community center foundation cracks. I examined them personally. Normal settling, cosmetic only. Any structural engineer would laugh at calling them critical. The roads needing emergency resurfacing. I measured pavement thickness and checked maintenance logs. Standard wear, scheduled for routine maintenance in 18 months. Nothing remotely emergency level. Linda had invented a $1.2 million crisis to extract money from 256 households. That's not HOA management, that's organized fraud. Time to get serious. I contacted Marcus Webb, a civil engineer I'd worked with on a previous project. The man owed me a favor after I'd saved his team from a catastrophic design error. Marcus examined our community infrastructure with professional thoroughness. His official report was devastating for Linda's emergency narrative. All systems within normal operating parameters. No emergency conditions exist. Proposed repairs are unnecessary and vastly overpriced. Estimated actual maintenance needs approximately $87,000 versus $1.2 million assessed. I filed Marcus's report with the HOA board along with a formal demand for independent third-party infrastructure assessment before any emergency funding. Professional, documented, legally bulletproof. Linda's response was calling an emergency board meeting to expel me for interfering with critical community safety measures. The meeting was scheduled for Thursday evening. Mandatory attendance. I had 3 days to prepare my defense against a woman who just committed fraud and was now trying to silence the witness. Casey helped me organize evidence while I calculated the scope of Linda's theft. The rustle of documents mixed with distant lawn mowers as we built an airtight case. Most people would have just paid and moved away, Casey said, studying particularly damning contractor quotes. Avoided the fight, cut their losses. Most people don't have girlfriends who apparently binge watch every legal drama ever made and somehow know contract law. She smiled that mysterious smile again. Lucky you, but Linda wasn't finished. Cornered fraudsters don't surrender, they go nuclear. The violation notices stopped. The sudden silence felt ominous, like the calm before a Category 5 hurricane. I should have known she was planning something that would change everything. Linda's silence lasted exactly 48 hours before she deployed her nuclear option. Tuesday morning, I'm heading to work when I notice my driveway is completely blocked. Not by one car, by 3, Linda's Lexus, her sister's BMW, some random Toyota I'd never seen, all parked bumper to bumper across my driveway exit. I walked outside in my work clothes, already running late for an important project meeting. Linda stood on the sidewalk, clipboard in hand, looking satisfied. Emergency parking accommodation for today's special HOA inspection, she announced. Your driveway provides optimal access to your property's exterior violations. This is insane. You can't just block my driveway. I have to get to work. Community business takes precedence over individual convenience. Section 1283, she tapped her clipboard. Also, you're being fined $300 for those unapproved window treatments. Your blinds are half an inch too wide. I called my supervisor explaining I'd be late due to an HOA emergency. Then I called a tow truck. The satisfying conversation with Randy's towing went exactly as I'd hoped. Here I've got 3 vehicles illegally blocking my private driveway. Owner refuses to move them. How fast can you get here? Randy chuckled. HOA president, yeah, we've been waiting for this call. Sunset Ridge has a reputation. We'll be there in 15 minutes. I went back inside, made fresh coffee, and waited. Through my window, I watched Linda conducting her fake inspection, taking photos of my perfectly compliant house, writing violation notices for imaginary infractions. She had no idea what was coming. 14 minutes later, Randy's towing arrived with 2 trucks. The metallic beep of backup alarms announced their presence as professional towers assessed the situation. Linda rushed over, waving her clipboard like it had legal authority. You can't tow these vehicles. This is official HOA business. Ma'am, these cars are illegally blocking a private driveway, Randy said with the patient tone of someone who dealt with this exact situation before. Owner has every right to have them removed. I'm HOA president. I have authority over all community parking. Randy smiled. Actually, you don't. This is private property. These vehicles are trespassing. We're removing them now. The mechanical whine of the tow truck lift was music to my ears. Linda's Lexus rose into the air like a captured trophy. Her face cycled through several interesting shades of red as she realized her power play had backfired spectacularly. You can't do this, she screamed, pulling out her phone. I'm calling the police. Please do, Randy said, already securing her BMW. They'll explain trespassing law to you. I stepped outside, coffee in hand, enjoying the show. Morning, Linda. Thanks for the inspection. Send me those violation notices and I'll add them to my legal file. Her eyes went wide as she realized I was documenting everything. Phone camera recording, neighbors watching, professional towers removing her vehicles according to actual law, not her made-up HOA authority. The police arrived 10 minutes later. Officer Martinez took one look at the situation and sighed like he'd seen this movie before. Ma'am, you can't block someone's private driveway for HOA inspections, he explained to Linda. That's trespassing regardless of your position. But I'm HOA president. Doesn't matter. Private property rights supersede HOA authority. You'll need to pay towing fees to retrieve your vehicles. The tow trucks departed with Linda's Lexus, her sister's BMW, and the mystery Toyota. Total towing and storage fees approximately $890. Linda stood on the sidewalk looking like someone had just explained that gravity applies to her too. But here's where it gets absolutely beautiful. While Linda was distracted by her towing disaster, I was photographing something she'd forgotten about. Her Lexus had been parked on my front lawn, not on the street, not in my driveway, directly on my grass. The deep tire tracks carved through 6 months of careful lawn restoration were clearly visible, documented, photographed from multiple angles with timestamps. Linda had just committed property damage while trying to find me for imaginary violations. The irony was absolutely delicious. I called Jake's Landscaping for a damage assessment. Jake examined the tire tracks with professional thoroughness, taking measurements and photos. His estimate was detailed and damning. Sod replacement $840, soil remediation $320, irrigation repair $275, total damages $1,435 plus my time and expertise. I filed a police report for property damage. Then I sent Linda a certified letter demanding reimbursement for lawn destruction. Professional, documented, legally airtight. Her response arrived 3 days later via her tax attorney husband. Aggressive, threatening, completely missing the point that his wife had committed actual crimes while trying to enforce fake rules. They weren't paying anything. They'd see me in court. Perfect. I wanted court. Because what Linda didn't know was that Casey, my legal drama-obsessed girlfriend, wasn't actually a graphic designer. Thursday evening, Casey arrived with a briefcase full of official documents. The rustle of legal papers mixed with my growing confusion as she spread court filings across my kitchen table. "Jordan, I need to tell you something," she said quietly. "I'm not a graphic designer. I'm a civil rights attorney specializing in HOA discrimination cases. I've been investigating Sunset Ridge for 14 months. Linda Carmichael is my primary target." My coffee cup nearly slipped from my numb fingers. "You're an attorney?" "I've been building a federal case against Linda since before we met. Fair housing violations, discriminatory enforcement, financial fraud. When you hired Jake's Landscaping and she targeted you, it gave me the perfect test case. So when she parked on my lawn to deliver a bogus violation, she committed property damage against a key witness in a federal investigation while her attorney husband threatened legal action." Her voice shifted into lawyer mode. Sharp, precise, deadly. "She's finished, Jordan, completely finished." The irony was breathtaking. I'd been documenting evidence thinking I was fighting alone while a federal civil rights attorney was building Linda's legal destruction. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Ethics rules. I couldn't compromise an active investigation." "But what you've documented independently is incredible. Victim testimony that'll destroy her in court." That evening, Casey revealed 2 years of investigation work, financial records showing $340,000 in kickbacks from preferred vendors, discriminatory enforcement patterns targeting minorities and LGBTQ residents, email evidence of conspiracy to defraud homeowners. "We're moving next week," Casey explained, organizing legal filings. Public filing. Media attention, full federal response. "But I want to coordinate with Thursday's board meeting." "You want to serve her at the meeting where she's trying to expel me?" "I want to serve her in front of witnesses, cameras, and every resident she's stolen from. Public corruption deserves public consequences." Linda had spent months trying to intimidate me into silence. Instead, she'd been building her own federal case one crime at a time, and she had absolutely no idea the hammer was about to fall. Thursday's board meeting transformed from my expulsion hearing into Linda's public destruction. Casey arrived in full attorney formal wear, carrying bankers' boxes of evidence. The community center filled beyond capacity as residents who'd suffered Linda's abuse came to watch. Linda called the meeting to order looking confident. "Before we address Mr. Matthews' interference with community safety, I have announcements about upcoming." Mrs. Carmichael, Casey interrupted, standing with legal authority. "I'm attorney Casey Morrison, representing 47 residents in federal civil rights and fraud actions against you personally and this HOA board." The room went completely silent. Linda's confident expression cracked like cheap paint. "I'm also serving you with this federal lawsuit," Casey continued, placing thick legal documents on the table. "Charges include Fair Housing Act violations, discriminatory enforcement, financial fraud, conspiracy to defraud, and as of Tuesday morning, felony property damage. The property damage charge relates to your illegal parking on my client's lawn while delivering fraudulent violation notices. That's documented with police reports, professional assessments, and witness testimony." Linda's face went white as she realized her power play had become a federal crime. But Casey wasn't finished. "We're also filing criminal complaints for the fraudulent $1.2 million emergency assessment. Your approved contractors have already provided sworn statements about the kickback arrangements. The board members who participated in this fraud are named co-defendants." 2 board members immediately stood and walked out. Smart move. Distancing themselves from Linda's sinking ship before federal charges attached to them too. Local news crews who'd been invited to cover routine HOA business suddenly had a corruption story that would lead the evening broadcast. Cameras captured Linda's complete breakdown as Casey methodically destroyed 8 years of fraudulent authority. "You can't do this," Linda stammered. "I'm HOA president. You're a criminal," Casey corrected. "And your authority ends the moment federal prosecutors file charges." The meeting dissolved into chaos as residents lined up to share their own victimization stories with news crews. Mr. Patel describing discrimination. The Morrisons detailing targeted harassment. Families calculating their stolen money and demanding justice. I sat quietly watching justice unfold. Months of documentation, evidence gathering, standing up to a bully who terrorized an entire neighborhood. Linda was led away by federal agents who'd been waiting outside, handcuffs, Miranda rights. The full public accountability that corruption deserves. Her tax attorney husband tried demanding her release, but federal agents aren't impressed by local lawyers throwing weight around. Casey stood beside evidence displays explaining to reporters how HOA corruption reaches federal crime levels. The community immediately voted to dissolve the existing board and implement democratic reforms, transparent budgeting, term limits, equal enforcement. Everything Linda had prevented through years of authoritarian control. 6 months later, Sunset Ridge had transformed into the community we'd always deserved. Linda pleaded guilty to federal charges rather than face trial. 22 months in federal prison plus $890,000 in restitution. Her law license was suspended. Her husband's practice collapsed under the scandal. Every household received full refunds of illegally collected fees. Average recovery $3,240 per family. Federal asset forfeiture added another $127,000 to our community fund. But the real transformation was psychological. People who'd been afraid to speak up were now actively participating in genuine democratic governance. Our new board, elected with actual votes, meets monthly with full transparency. Mr. Patel was elected treasurer and implemented quarterly financial reviews. The Morrisons joined the architectural committee and eliminated discriminatory enforcement. Jake's Landscaping became one of 12 approved vendors competing on fair pricing. My relationship with Casey deepened through our shared commitment to justice. Fighting corruption together revealed character that matters more than romance. You know what I learned from this, Casey said one evening as we walked through our transformed neighborhood. Most HOA abuse happens because good people stay silent. When residents organize and document violations, corrupt boards crumble fast. I'd become an accidental advocate for HOA reform, teaching workshops on legal rights and evidence documentation. Our story inspired similar actions in 23 communities across 2 states. The national media attention led to state legislation strengthening penalties for board corruption and requiring financial transparency. Our case became a textbook example of how federal civil rights laws apply to housing discrimination. But the most satisfying transformation was personal. I'd found my voice, not through submission to authority, but through fighting for principles that make neighborhoods worth living in. Linda's seized house became a community garden where residents grow vegetables for local food banks. The Sunset Ridge Restoration Project, funded by recovered stolen money, offers free landscaping help to families who can't afford professional services. Remember, Casey tells community groups during our reform presentations, bullies only win when good people stay silent. Document everything. Organize your neighbors. Never underestimate the power of ordinary citizens fighting for justice. The sound of children playing echoes where violations once dominated. The sweet scent of community barbecues replaces the bitter taste of injustice. Most importantly, I hold keys to a home that's finally truly mine. Not because I own property, but because I helped create a community worth defending. Linda learned that parking on someone's lawn to deliver bogus violations carries serious consequences when federal prosecutors get involved. Her suburban empire crumbled because one person refused to stay silent, documented everything, and discovered that justice sometimes comes with tow trucks, handcuffs, and camera flashes.